Every portal Rick opens doesn't just travel between dimensions, it potentially destroys entire realities. Ricks across dimensions breed Jerry and Beth together specifically to produce Mortys. Evil Morty's entire plan reveals that the Rick-Morty dynamic is systematic abuse on a multiversal scale. Despite being our Rick, he committed more atrocities than any other Rick variant. The Citadel of Ricks wasn't created for cooperation. It was designed to contain the most dangerous Ricks. Morty's anxiety doesn't just camouflage Rick's genius brainwaves, it actively broadcasts his suffering across dimensions. Let's unpack what each of these revelations really means. Rick's portal gun seems like the ultimate freedom device, unlimited travel across infinite realities. But what if every portal Rick opens is actually an act of multiversal genocide? What if the central finite curve isn't Rick's personal playground, but evidence of the most systematic reality destruction in existence? In the Rickshank Rickdemption, we learn about the central finite curve, supposedly a subset where Rick is the smartest being. Most fans see this as Rick choosing favorable dimensions. But examine the terminology. It's called a curve, implying an artificially created boundary around something that should be infinite. The show reveals Rick's technology operates on replacement and elimination principles. When they Cronenberg their dimension in Rick Potion number 9, Rick doesn't fix it. He abandons it for a reality where they're already dead. This isn't emergency protocol, it's standard procedure. Rick casually mentions they can only do this 3 or 4 more times, tops. Here's the terrifying question. If infinite realities truly exist, why is there a limit? The answer is that Rick has already systematically destroyed most alternative versions of their lives. Every portal jump doesn't just access a new reality, it potentially collapses the quantum stability of the destination dimension. The central finite curve represents a quarantine zone surrounded by destroyed realities. Rick hasn't found dimensions where he's smartest, he's eliminated every dimension where he isn't. The curve is the boundary between Rick's controlled sandbox and the graveyard of universes he's murdered to maintain supremacy. This reframes every casual portal jump. When Rick escapes the Galactic Federation, he's not just traveling, he's potentially collapsing entire dimensional frameworks. Rick's ease with abandoning realities isn't a character flaw, it's operational necessity. He cannot acknowledge the scale of his genocide because it would be psychologically impossible to function. Rick's portal gun isn't a tool of exploration. It's a weapon of multiversal ethnic cleansing. Every adventure, every escape, every dimension hop is built on the remains of countless murdered universes. Rick hasn't discovered infinite realities, he's systematically destroyed them to create a finite playground where his ego remains intact. And this is just the beginning. If Rick commits genocide on this scale to maintain intellectual superiority, what is he willing to do to the people closest to him? The Smith family dysfunction seems random, just another broken household. But what if their natural relationships are deliberate genetic engineering? What if Jerry and Beth's marriage, Summer's birth, and Morty's existence are the result of multidimensional breeding programs designed to produce Rick's perfect companions? Examine the statistical impossibility of Rick's family structure. In the Rickshank Rickdemption, Ricks across infinite dimensions have identical family configurations. Beth marries Jerry, they produce Summer and Morty in exact order, with Morty possessing precise brainwave patterns to camouflage Rick's thoughts. If relationships were random across realities, we should see massive variation. Instead, identical patterns. The Citadel provides disturbing evidence. In the Ricklantis mix-up, we witness industrial Morty clone production, not random children, but specifically engineered beings with exact anxiety levels, intellectual limitations, and emotional vulnerabilities that make them useful to Ricks. The Citadel maintains detailed psychological profiles, ensuring each clone meets behavioral requirements. Rick demonstrates intimate genetics knowledge throughout the series. In Anatomy Park, he shows mastery of biological engineering. In The Whirly-Durly Conspiracy, he casually mentions scientific processes requiring years to develop. Rick hasn't learned genetic manipulation, he's been practicing it for decades on his family line. The Smith family represents multidimensional selective breeding results. Jerry and Beth aren't accidentally compatible. They're genetically programmed for attraction across infinite realities. Jerry's insecurity and neediness ensure he'll never leave. Beth's daddy issues guarantee she'll always seek Rick's approval. This isn't character development, it's biological programming. Summer exists as a control buffer. Her confidence prevents family overdependence on any member. Morty represents the achievement. His brain waves produce specific frequencies to hide Rick's thoughts, while emotional volatility provides constant entertainment and superiority validation. Rick's accidental return isn't a coincidence. He abandoned Beth to allow breeding program completion without interference, returning when Morty reached optimal manipulation age, old enough for usefulness, young enough for control. The Smith family isn't a family, they're livestock. Rick has spent generations breeding the perfect genetic combination. A granddaughter providing intellectual stimulation, a grandson providing camouflage and entertainment, a daughter providing emotional manipulation opportunities, and a son-in-law providing a perfect target for abuse and control. But if Rick has engineered his own family to serve his purposes, what does that tell us about the one family member who dared to fight back against this system? Evil Morty is presented as the ultimate villain, a Morty who became a ruthless dictator. But what if everything we've been told about Evil Morty is propaganda? What if his evil actions are desperate attempts by an abuse victim to expose and escape systematic multiversal exploitation? Examine Evil Morty's actual crimes versus motivations. In Close Rick Counters of the Rick kind, he kills Ricks and tortures Mortys. But notice his methodology. He targets Ricks while using other Mortys as weapons, not victims. The tortured Mortys aren't random casualties, they're deliberately displayed to force Ricks to confront suffering they normally ignore. In the Ricklantis mix-up, Evil Morty's campaign focuses on ending Morty exploitation by the ruling Rick class. His first acts after winning aren't random violence. They're systematic dismantling of power structures enabling Rick supremacy. He doesn't kill for pleasure. He eliminates enforcers of an abusive system. In Rick Mirai Jack, Evil Morty's escape plan reveals his true understanding. He doesn't want to rule the Citadel or control Ricks. He wants to escape the entire Rick-dominated multiverse section. His evil plan is literally trying to leave an abusive situation. Notice the narrative framing. When Rick abandons dimensions or manipulates family, it's comedic character flaws. When Evil Morty fights systematic abuse, it's portrayed as villainy. The show itself gaslights viewers into sympathizing with abusers while demonizing victims who refuse their assigned roles. Evil Morty represents the only Morty who fully comprehends Rick's multiversal abuse network. He's witnessed breeding programs, memory manipulation, casual genocide, and systematic exploitation of infinite Mortis. His evil isn't moral corruption, it's a trauma response. Every action serves one purpose, exposing the Rick-Morty relationship as institutionalized abuse. When he tortures Mortys, he creates undeniable suffering evidence that Ricks can't dismiss. When he kills Ricks, he eliminates systematic exploitation perpetrators. When he escapes the central finite curve, he demonstrates the system can be escaped through complete rejection of Rick's manufactured reality. Evil Morty isn't the villain, he's the hero. His entire arc involves recognizing abuse, refusing to normalize it, and taking extreme measures to escape a system designed to make escape impossible. We're meant to hate him because his existence proves Rick's relationship with Morty is fundamentally wrong. If Evil Morty represents the Morty who escaped Rick's control, what does that tell us about our main Rick, the one we're supposed to sympathize with? Rick C-137 is positioned as the good Rick, the one who cares about family and fights Citadel corruption. But what if our emotional attachment has blinded us to a horrifying truth? What if Rick C-137's love for his family hasn't made him more human? It's made him the most dangerous Rick in existence. Examine Rick C-137's body count compared to other Ricks. In The Wedding Squanchers, he single-handedly destroys the entire Galactic Federation. Not just Earth operations, but governmental structures across multiple star systems. This isn't tactical warfare. It's genocidal revenge collapsing galactic civilizations. Citadel Ricks, despite being portrayed as corrupt, primarily engage in political manipulation and economic exploitation. They maintain order through bureaucracy, not mass murder. Rick C-137's response? Complete annihilation. In The Rick Shank Rickdemption, he doesn't escape or expose the Citadel. He orchestrates total destruction, killing thousands of Ricks and Mortys. Compare problem-solving approaches. In Rick Potion No. 9, other Ricks might attempt solutions or damage control. Rick C-137's immediate response is abandoning entire realities to doom. When captured, most Ricks negotiate or escape quietly. Rick C-137 burns down 3 governmental structures to prove a point. The reveal of Rick Prime exposes even more horror. Rick Prime killed Rick C-137's family and disappeared. Rick C-137's response was hunting him across infinite dimensions for decades, systematically murdering any Rick who might be Prime. Our sympathetic Rick is literally a multiversal serial killer. Rick C-137's emotional attachments don't humanize him, they weaponize him. Every atrocity is justified through family love, making violence both more extreme and psychologically sustainable. Other Ricks operate within parameters. Rick C-137 has no limits because he frames unlimited violence as protection. The show manipulates perspective by presenting massacres through emotional lenses. We cheer Federation destruction because they threatened family. We celebrate Citadel annihilation because it represented corruption. But the death scales involved dwarf anything other Ricks accomplished. Rick C-137's family love serves as a permission structure for unlimited cruelty toward everyone else. He's not the Rick who learned to care, he's the Rick whose caring removed every psychological barrier limiting destructive capacity. Rick C-137 isn't the exception to Rick Evil, he's the perfected form. His emotional attachments haven't made him better than other Ricks. They've eliminated every psychological barrier that might have limited his destruction capacity. Love hasn't redeemed Rick C-137. It's turned him into the most efficiently murderous Rick in existence. But if Rick C-137's family attachments make him more dangerous rather than sympathetic, what does that reveal about the system that created him? The Citadel of Ricks appears to be a functioning democracy where Ricks and Mortys participate in elections and civic life. But what if this political structure is an elaborate containment system? What if the Citadel wasn't created to unite Ricks but to quarantine the most dangerous ones and prevent them from destroying the multiverse? Examine who actually lives at the Citadel. In the Ricklantis mix-up, the population consists primarily of Rick failures by Rick standards. Simple Rick, who abandoned science for family happiness. Doofus Rick, considered intellectually inferior. Worker Ricks, who gave up scientific pursuits for manual labor. These aren't the universe's smartest beings forming collectives, they're rejects who couldn't function in normal dimensions. The infrastructure reveals true purpose. The Citadel exists in an isolated pocket dimension with strictly controlled access. Ricks can't simply portal in and out, there are specific entry and exit protocols. Architecture resembles a massive space station more than a city, with clear containment features and monitoring systems. Other dimensions regard the Citadel with both contempt and fear. In the Rickshank Rickdemption, Rick C-137 describes it as a place for Ricks who gave up or couldn't hack it. The Galactic Federation treats the Citadel as a known threat requiring containment, not a legitimate government for negotiation. Advanced civilizations view it as a quarantine zone, not a political entity. The democratic processes serve containment rather than governance. Elections and political movements provide agency illusions while channeling potentially destructive energy into harmless internal conflicts. When Evil Morty manipulates these systems, he's not corrupting democracy, he's exploiting control mechanisms designed to keep dangerous beings distracted. The Citadel represents the multiverse's solution to the Rick problem. What do you do with beings who can destroy realities on whims? Elimination might be impossible given Rick-level technology. The answer is containment disguised as community. By creating spaces where failed and dangerous Ricks feel superior to Mortys while remaining isolated from the broader multiverse, the Citadel serves as a voluntary prison. Democratic elements aren't genuine civic participation, they're psychological control tools, giving dangerous beings control illusions while keeping them safely contained. The Citadel was never a government. It was the multiverse's most sophisticated prison system, designed to contain beings too dangerous for normal reality coexistence. The politics were therapeutic programming, and democracy was sedation for cosmic-level threats. But if the Citadel contained dangerous Ricks, what does that tell us about specific mechanisms used to monitor and control them? Rick claims Morty's anxiety naturally camouflages his genius brainwaves, making them undetectable to enemies. It's presented as a convenient biological quirk benefiting both. But what if this explanation is a lie? What if Morty's brainwaves don't hide Rick's thoughts, but broadcast Morty's suffering as warning signals across the multiverse? Examine Rick's shifting explanations about Morty waves. In Rick Potion number 9, Rick says, Morty's brainwaves cancel his genius frequencies. But explanations change throughout the series. Sometimes anxiety provides camouflage, other times interference, later dampening fields. These inconsistencies become suspicious when examining how other Ricks actually locate each other. In Close Rick Counters of the Rick Kind, Ricks track each other through portal signatures and technology, not brainwave detection. The Council operates across infinite dimensions without apparent concern about genius-level brainwaves being detected. If Rick's thoughts were truly detectable without Morty camouflage, how do thousands of Citadel Ricks function together? Most revealing, Morty's anxiety patterns correlate with Rick's cruelest behavior. Morty's most intense anxiety spikes occur during Rick's worst moments, abandoning dimensions, manipulating memories, committing violence. If waves were simple camouflage, they should provide consistent coverage regardless of emotional state. Instead, signals intensify precisely when Morty experiences maximum trauma. Rick possesses exact technology needed to broadcast suffering. In Morty Night Run, he creates devices reading neural patterns. In Total Recall, he develops technology detecting false memories. Rick has the tools to broadcast Morty's suffering across dimensional frequencies. Morty's brainwaves serve as multiversal warning systems, constant broadcasts alerting other Ricks to actively abusive Rick-Morty relationships. Signals don't hide Rick's presence, they advertise it. Every anxiety spike sends clear messages. This Rick is currently torturing his Morty. This explains complex dynamics between Ricks. They don't avoid Rick C-137 because they can't detect him. They avoid him because Morty's suffering broadcasts make clear this Rick has crossed lines others won't cross. The camouflage story is gaslighting to convince Morty his trauma serves protective purposes. Morty's Morty waves aren't camouflage, they're torture broadcast systems transmitting his suffering across the multiverse as both warnings to other Ricks and demonstrations of Rick C-137's willingness to inflict psychological damage. Every moment of Morty's anxiety is weaponized, transmitted as evidence of Rick's cruelty. But if Rick broadcasts Morty's torture as signals of his dangerous nature, where did Rick learn such systematic cruelty? Only 6 revelations down, and the craziest ones are still ahead. Don't miss Part 2. Subscribe now for the rest of Rick and Morty's hidden story.